Welcome to In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard Price, CEO of academia.edu, and I'm really glad you could join me today. This is where we dive deep into academic research, unpack what scholars are working on, and get to grips with ideas that, well, sometimes feel like they hit a little close to home. And I just want to say right from the top, my job here is to present papers as neutrally as possible. I'm exploring ideas with you, not endorsing them. Okay? Okay, so the paper on our plate today is by Doug Rice, and it poses a pretty powerful question. What happens when a society, or a certain group within it, steadfastly refuses to acknowledge its historical and present harms, refuses, in a sense, to be healed? That's our core problem to wrestle with. Why does this matter? Well, because it challenges us to think about self-perception, denial, and maybe, just maybe, where our nation is headed if those cycles don't break. Let's start with the setting. Rice paints a vivid, some might say startling, picture of the United States at a crossroads. He describes a country on a downward slide, culturally, politically, even morally. The idea is that as certain wounds go unhealed, especially those linked to racism, white supremacy, and the myth of a long gone American greatness, the nation's future gets more and more precarious. Rice doesn't pull punches. He goes so far as to argue that the country is echoing some of the darkest periods in 20th century Europe. The word fascistic comes up. The imagery is heavy. But hey, let's pause for just a second. That's a big claim. And as always, I'm just laying out Rice's arguments, not saying, heck, yeah, this is how it is. It's an invitation to reflect, not doctrine. Now, Rice's method is less statistics and more narrative, almost a social critique mixed with a kind of cultural autopsy. He strings together historical parallels, Nazi Germany, post-war reckonings, America's own civil rights failures, and he comes back again and again to the issue of accountability, or the lack of it. Who, he asks, is responsible for steering the country away from denial and toward repair? Is it even possible if the body politic refuses every treatment? Can a nation recover if it refuses to admit it's sick? It's kind of haunting. Rice argues basically that white America, his term, not mine, is locked in a cycle of denial. There's a refusal, he says, to truly engage with the nation's legacy of racism and imperialism. And the upshot isn't just moral or emotional, it's existential. In other words, he's saying America might be on a self-destructive course, one fueled by avoidance and nostalgia. The warning is that unless something changes, unless healing begins, America might go the way of failed empires and end up a shadow of itself. Yikes, right? That's a lot. So, what does all this mean for us? Like you listening right now? Well, I know it can feel overwhelming, but Rice's paper invites us to look at our history, at our society, and just pause. Pause and wonder, are there wounds we're ignoring in our communities, our institutions? Are there stories we aren't listening to? What would it mean, even just in our own lives, to try to break a cycle of denial? How much of the future gets written by the stories we're willing or not willing to repeat? And, one thing I find so fascinating is sometimes people hear these kinds of arguments and it feels like a personal attack. But if we treat scholarship as an experiment, not a verdict, just, ideas to gnaw on, it opens a lot more doors than it closes. I was actually reading something totally unrelated the other day, totally lost my train of thought. Ha ha ha. You know how you jump from one Wikipedia page to another and suddenly you're reading about the history of traffic lights in Detroit or something. But anyway, what I'm saying is questions about accountability and history aren't so different from the little decisions we make every day. Do we look away or do we look closer? And I really want to emphasize again, I'm not saying this paper has all the answers. Academic work like Rice's is about challenging us to think, not spoon feeding us the truth, all caps. So take what resonates and let the rest just be there, like something on the edge of your mind. Maybe it'll click later, maybe it won't. All right, so to bring this home, Doug Rice's paper, They Refuse to Be Healed, puts forth a vital, if unsettling, argument that healing on a societal scale requires real, honest accountability, and that without it, the future might get a whole lot darker before it gets better. It's heavy, but also kind of freeing. I mean, recognizing where we are is always the first step toward figuring out where we want to go. Thanks for going in depth with me. I'm Richard Price, and I'll see you next time with more ideas, more questions, and, hopefully, a few more answers. Until then, keep thinking, keep exploring, and remember, research is for all of us, not just the people with the fancy degrees. See ya.